First speaker actually is Nicki Drinkwater. So I'm going to introduce Nicki. She's the General Manager of Media and External Communications at NBN. Nicki is a strategic corporate brand and communications leader who draws on 20 years' experience in a diverse range of markets to build corporate reputation and trust, manage risk, and create value for leaders and organisations. She leverages standout integrated communications and stakeholder relationship skills, external insights, and a digital-first mindset to build trust and advocacy. A former elite athlete, international rugby player, and accomplished sports administrator, she also brings an extensive understanding of what it takes to build high-performance cultures and authentic, trusted brand that elicit loyalty and underpin sustained success. Welcome, Nicki.
Thanks, Belinda. I hope I can match your energy. That was wonderful. Thank you for the intro, and hi everyone, welcome, lovely to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to kick things off on day one. It's lovely to be anywhere in person, actually, I've got to say. Thank you for that intro, Belinda. I'll just also tell you a little bit about where I've come from before NBN. So I've been at NBN for 2 years. My remit is not as broad as Belinda's. I can't claim 7 areas, but within the media and external comms family, we have media, everything from corporate reporting and corporate comms right through to customer and consumer issues and the proactive reputation stuff. We've also got social media. We have an end-to-end social team at NBN and an in-house content team. So that's the media and external comms family. And before at NBN, I was at Coca-Cola Amatil for 6 years, or Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners as it's now called. Always got confused with Coke. Amatil was the bottler and distributor for the Coke portfolio. But it was also a group of companies that included having its own brands. And this portfolio included, obviously, the soft drinks, but also hot beverages, particularly coffee and alcohol as well, right across Asia Pac. And there, my role included working with a lot of our corporate brands. We had quite a few companies in that group, but also, obviously, the very well-known consumer brands. Prior to Amatil, I spent, as Belinda mentioned, 10 years in sports governing bodies over here with the New South Wales Waratahs. And prior to that, back home where I was born in England with England Rugby and the Rugby Football Union. Very interesting, actually, sports brands, a very different type of consumer brand because effectively you're selling a product and a service, I guess a bit like the Red Cross. Belinda, I hadn't considered that, so thank you. Reputation and trust are a real passion of mine. So I hope that I can bring with you to you that kind of combination of public and private sector experience, and I'll try to leave you with something that you can take away. So thank you. Now, Mary and Belinda have done a welcome to country, but I did want to share one little story from NBN. This is Leah Kakana, and Leah Kakana is the name of our First Peoples community at NBN. The word means waterfall or ripple effect, and it embodies that sentiment of a ripple effect. The name was gifted to us by the Melithina Tiakana Warana Aboriginal Corporation and numerous other affiliated organisations within the Tasmanian Regional Aboriginal Communities Alliance. So today I'm going to be talking about public trust and reputation. And I just want to emphasise the 2 words here, the role of transparent communications in building trust. As Belinda said, now more than ever, Australians expect everyone, all organisations, whether you're in the public or private sector, and leaders to work together to address the challenges that are facing us all, our people and our planet. It's not enough just to provide a service or a product anymore. As organisations and leaders, we are expected to make a difference, a broader difference to society. And I guess as public sector professionals, probably this room is as well aware of that as anyone is. But not only that, and this is something I find really interesting, when it comes to building that trust and reputation, over the past few years, character metrics have become more important than capability metrics. So how you do what you do is now more important to how you're perceived than what you do. I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunities that presents for us as modern corporate affairs professionals, and I'm going to focus on 5 areas. So, number 1, having a clear company narrative or knowing your story. Then number 2, the importance of listening to your stakeholders, that data and feedback. Number 3, developing your strategic comms pillars, if you like, the chapters of your story. Fourthly, then taking that to market through integrated planning and execution. And lastly, keeping it real, going back to that transparent and authentic. So throughout, I'm going to share some general observations and suggestions as we go through, but I'll also share a little bit about what we're doing at NBN and some of our learnings, because we've got a few. I'll talk a little bit about the journey that we're going on now, very much still are. And before I kick on, though, I thought it would be useful. I liked using this little purpose and messaging house to serve as a useful illustration, I guess, of how all these components come together. So at the top there, the roof, your story is your purpose, it's your why. Underneath that, you've got your comms pillars, your comms strategy, that's your how. And then underpinning that, as I mentioned, you've got your integrated comms planning and execution, really that guides what we do. And then surrounding us all, listening to our stakeholders and our people. And that really helps us to make sure that we keep understanding our operating context. All right, we're going to kick off. So, number 1, your narrative or company story. Definitely your starting point. As communicators, it empowers us, but it also empowers our leaders and our people. And I think really importantly, I don't know whether there's any other Simon Sinek fans in the room, but it talks to the why you do, what you want to be known for. I love that, his Start With Why video. It's exactly that. People buy why you do what you do, not what you do. And if you're a service provider, I guess many of you are, like we are, there is a tendency to focus on informing people, imparting information. But I guess, as I'm going to talk to, and I'm sure others will today as well, building trust and building good reputations really relies on engaging people. We've got to talk to hearts and minds as well as heads. We've got to think about how we make people feel, not just what they think about us. More on that later. And lastly, of course, it's really important for us all to use simple, everyday language. And of course, to make sure that we're pulling that language through in all our comms, whether that's our employee messaging, our corporate comms, corporate reporting, our reactive media, social speeches, op-eds, everything. Getting clear on our story has been a big focus for us at NBN over the past kind of 6+ months. As a company, we have changed direction quite a lot since the completion of the network build, and our narrative needed to change course as well. Our narrative, or our NBN story, shares the story of our network really and how it's transformed the Australian way of life. From our biggest cities to our smallest communities, it touches everything we do, from healthcare and home entertainment to the way we run our businesses. And by delivering that fast, resilient and reliable broadband, the network has created more opportunities for our country and its people. And we have it's an exciting future that we believe everyone should get to enjoy. The proof points and key messages from our NBN story are organised into chapters and support that story. And they really allow us to talk to the tangible benefits of what we do. And it's storytelling, it's illustrating how we do what we do. We'll pick up a little bit more on that last one later. But I just wanted to say that this story has been really valuable for us in making that shift that I mentioned from informing to engaging. When we were building the network, it was really important to inform people. We had to inform and educate. But as I mentioned, there is a real danger that as communicators that we do become too functional. We saw that in our reputation analysis and research. We saw that we were building up, by giving this rational information, we were building up knowledge in the general public. But we saw that that wasn't converting into sentiment gains, which is what we need for reputation. And, you know, obviously there are other factors at play too. Being a company with quite a political history being one of those. I'm going to talk more about it in the next section when we go to listening. But before we do, I wanted to give you a taster of where we're taking our story. And hopefully you'll see what I mean about talking to hearts and minds as opposed to just informing. So I put on my best narrator voice now. Established by the government in 2009 to deliver fast, reliable broadband across Australia, the NBN network is now the digital backbone of our nation. It's changed the way we do things. Just over 10 years ago, it didn't exist. And yet now the NBN network supports so much of what we do every day. People struggling with their health can get help hundreds of kilometres away. Businesses are tapping into new markets, and the hard work has been taken out of working from home. In just 6 years, data use has tripled, and that need for broadband will reach levels never seen before over the next decade as the internet literally transforms the world and how we live. So we grow the network to stay ahead of that demand. That's why we're pushing fibre deeper into our communities and expanding our fixed wireless and satellite coverage so millions more Australians can enjoy even better broadband. We are teaming with community makers to expand our network into our newest suburbs and towns, creating smart cities and transforming old CBDs into technology hubs. Our focus on the regions is sharper than ever, cutting those vast distances and opening countless opportunities. We're breaking down barriers which prevent some of our most vulnerable people from taking advantage of our digital world. We believe everyone should enjoy the benefits. And we're looking ahead. We're investing in innovation today so Australians are ready for tomorrow. We're working with Australia's leading scientists and universities to unleash the power of the internet, inventing new technologies and enabling others to do so as well. And we know we're going to be around for a long time, so we take sustainability seriously. It's all about looking after our people and the environment so we hand down a healthy planet for our children. And because we're owned by you, we work hard to have a sustainable business so we can invest back into the network right across Australia. And NBN is also a great place to work because it's only with great people that we can make a great difference. But this is bigger than just us. Our business partners, suppliers, investors, and everyone who uses the network will all help us become the best we can be. Because we're Australia's network. Yep, we're the NBN. Sorry. So I hope I did okay there. I've got a voice for radio. I don't know about a face for TV. But if you could contrast that with the About Us section of our corporate website, which still informs you that NBN was established to design, build and operate Australia's wholesale broadband access network and is structured as a wholesale-only open access broadband network, which is all true, of course, and relevant information in some contexts. So let's move on to the second area. Listening to stakeholders. I don't know about you, but I'm sure that one of the questions that you get asked as a comms professional more often than anything else is, how do we measure reputation? How do we quantify the value of the service that we provide? Or how do we know if we're doing a good job of protecting and promoting our company's reputation? So as well as being able to put that numerical value on reputation, and importantly, track that over time and against our peer groups or competitors, listening to your end users or your stakeholders and having that kind of research and insights program is really beneficial too, because it helps us understand what's important to them and what factors are driving that perception, which means we know which levers to pull. So I just wanted to touch on one really important point. I think the broader role of a modern corporate affairs function is not to fall into the trap of thinking that everything is a comms solve. It's actually on our business, our organisations and our leaders to determine whether the solution is to do something we're not doing well or we're not doing before we think about saying something we're not saying well or we're not saying at all. So we're going to come back to that later. Just to give you an example of what I mentioned about those underlying drivers and how they can feed into your strategy. We use RepTrack for research and insights, but I know that there are a good few other providers out there too. From quarterly surveys listening to our end users, in our case, that's the general public, one of the really important things we can do is determine which factors are important to our stakeholders and which factors they think or perceive us to be good at. And then we use that to guide our strategy. I just have to point out in this illustration that the data in there is historical. It's not current. And if I could just explain the axes, so the vertical one is things that are seen as the most important, so higher up, seen as most important. Horizontal, things we're perceived to be best at. So the more it is to the right, the better we're seen to be at it. I guess there are two things we can do from a reputation strategy. And that first area, group one, is we can improve the things that are perceived to be the most important. So higher up, perceived to be most important. Well, if they're important from a reputation perspective, our job is to amplify them. And we can do that predominantly through execution, reach and frequency of our comms, if of course we're doing them. Otherwise, our job is to pass that information to the business because we should be doing them. And the second thing we can do, number two there, the things over on the right, what we're perceived to be very good at. So we can leverage those areas, the things we're perceived to be good at, and help our stakeholders understand how important they are. And that's where the narrative comes in. A clearer focus on the benefits of the things we're good at. Some examples in that first group, you can see meets customer needs, and some examples in that second group, having a positive influence on society, or being profitable, things we're seen as good at. If I could just make one point on this, that listening to your stakeholders is not the same as having media monitoring. We do have media monitoring, as I'm sure many of you do. And we regularly get 80 to 90% positive sentiment in our media analysis. But it doesn't obviously tell the full story. Yes, it's important to track your media sentiment and your media reach, but I just wanted to make the point that it doesn't necessarily reflect the sentiment of your end users. And I think ultimately, as comms professionals, our job is to improve reputation and change sentiment. So yes, track media output and reach, but I think it's really important to have the end user listening as well. So moving to section 3, developing our comms pillars. So we've got our story, and we know what's important to our stakeholders. Maybe we know how we're tracking against those things too. Our strategic pillars, I like to think of them as the chapters of our story. They help us align our comms activity to the story we're trying to tell. And they demonstrate how we're delivering against those priorities to our stakeholders. For us at NBN, you may have picked up on what those 6 comms pillars are from the story I read earlier. We have 6. On the left there, we've got strong and accountable business, so pretty much our financial performance and our governance. Secondly, we've got a future-ready network. So that's our, if you like, our operational performance. Thirdly, we've got being customer and industry-led. So that's kind of CX. Fourth, we have being an employer of choice, being seen as a great place to work, attracting and retaining talent. Fifth, we've got community wellbeing, or if you like in the kind of ESG terms, that's our social side, social sustainability or social impact. And lastly, we've got environmental impact. And again, just calling out that those first 3, largely capability, what we do. And those second 3, largely character, how we do what we do. And as I mentioned, second 3 becoming much more, or have become much more important in recent years. And I guess that's why maybe as a service provider or an infrastructure company, those last 3 pillars wouldn't traditionally have been kind of our core offering, and it might be the same for many of you. But we know that public expectations have really changed, and it isn't just millennials that care about this stuff. It's everyone, including our people. And so we know that they're increasingly vital for our reputation. But it's not just our reputation, it's all our support. So it's attracting and retaining talent, attracting and retaining investment, attracting partnerships, and keeping our people too. So really, really vital. Okay, moving on to number 4, and we've talked largely about kind of strategy and planning, but with this one we really move into kind of execution and evaluation, leveraging all of your touch points. It's that integrated planning and execution. And I want to make probably 2 key points in this section. The first one is remembering to put your people at the centre. And I'm sure we all know advocacy really starts from within. And I remember reading some research, it was kind of pre-COVID now. I don't know whether it kind of horrified me or I related to it on a deeper level, but it said that CEOs, politicians and company spokespeople are the least trusted people on the planet. I guess it makes sense though, because we're all kind of seen as having a barrow to push. The most trusted people, and who people trust most, is people like them. And scientists or doctors, anyone with letters after their name. And I think we see that in our community every day now, whether it's the power of reviews and ratings, TripAdvisor, Glassdoor. But I think for comms professionals, the reminder for all of us is not just to focus on pumping out kind of press releases, and really to think about how we're empowering employee advocacy. And how we're raising the profile and reach and reputation of our leaders, because we are our people. I'm sure all of you, as we do, will always try and tell your people stuff first. So internal comms first, external comms second. We do that cascaded thing. But we're also working, and have been for some time, on really developing a structured leadership presence program. So kind of really dedicated training for our executive manager, executive leader community, and comms partnering with them to really raise their reach and profile. Plus, we're putting in a lot of work with our people and culture colleagues and internal comms into employee advocacy, and looking at how we can really help our people be kind of really great advocates. And certainly true probably true at NBN as well. I think, often we're really good at telling our people what they can't do and scaring them off, making sure no one speaks to the media, and no, we have a release of information into the public domain policy. And in general, I think, people are petrified of talking to the media or posting anything on social. And many organisations are now kind of trying to step back from that and go, yes, we need the controls, but actually we want to empower our people to get out there and talk on our behalf, like asterisk, within the guardrails and controls that, we need from a governance perspective. So we've got a lot of work going into that, including running social media masterclasses. We're trying to get to, all 5,000 of our people by the end of next year. So we're really helping them. We're really good at telling them what they can't do, but we want to tell them what they can do and help them with how to do it effectively as well. That was the first one. Second one is the power of owned channels. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about that today, and probably even more in the room next door with the social media conference too. But our own channels, predominantly social, super, super important for our ability to engage with end users directly. And I say engage and not communicate because it's two-way. So, whether that's your customers, your community, stakeholders, whatever, but your end users, it's immense. And I think the other kind of really relevant thing as well is you can control the message. Super cost effective, super great for targeting, whether it's by interest or geographically. And as I mentioned, basically free focus groups with a two-way engagement if you're really good at your community management and social listening. And then, of course, there's the interplay between kind of 1 and 2. And little top tip, if you don't already use LinkedIn My Company, do. It's really awesome. It's, to sum it up in a nutshell, it's a functionality within LinkedIn where if your people identify that they're one of your employees, whenever you post anything on your company's socials, you can also post a form of words pre-written that your employees can use to share that directly onto their own socials. And it looks like a post from them. It then doesn't look like they're sharing your content. And of course, you, as we do, encourage them to tailor it. But we find that really useful. Just keep a pipeline of content in there that you want them to share. And at the same time that we're doing all this training, encouraging them to, be advocates for us, we're giving them ready-made content. And I think it's free too, so there we go. Just got one more chart on this section. Going back to RepTrack or your listening and insights, another benefit of these kind of programs is it gives you the ability to analyse the effectiveness of your touch points. The way this model works is it splits your touch points into 4 categories. So you've got paid, which is kind of normally the domain of marketing. You've got owned, which is effectively social plus website, etc. And the direct stuff that you put out, like press releases. You've got direct, so direct engagement, call centres, in our case, field force, and also your employees. And then lastly, you've got earned, media and third-party commentary about you. And again, I have to say, this is historical data. I'm not allowed to share current data, but and maybe I should explain the axes as well. Vertical one, the higher up, the more impact that channel's having for you, positive. And the further across to the right, the higher its reach. So again, 2 strategies here. First one, the stuff that has the highest impact on your reputation, get it to more people. And the stuff that gets to the most people, make sure it's working really effectively for you, so make sure it's your best content. And this is, right here on a slide, was our case for our in-house social team. It's the case for owned channels and social media. I had to take the axes off, but if you look at that owned circle super high up, we found that people who had engaged with us on our social channels rated our reputation double-digit percentage points more highly. Now, we were only getting to, like 10% of people. But the opportunity there for us, if those 10% of people rate us 10 points more highly, is get to more people. And that's why we've got an end-to-end team and we do everything, everything direct. Last one, keeping it real. We're going back to transparent and authentic here. Been talking a lot about the role of comms in building reputation. Always good also to be careful that comms doesn't undermine reputation. Got to be authentic. And the point I wanted to land here is has to be consistent with people's lived experience of you. I like to think of the role of a modern corporate affairs function as basically kind of two things, and I think of it as window in, window out. Yes, we are amplifying the drivers of reputation, most times that have nothing to do with us, products and services, environment, great place to work. But also we're bringing insights into the business and our leaders. Window in, window out. As I said, one of the learnings from our journey, and we've gone on this reputation reporting, so we bring these insights to our executive committee. Reputation is not just the domain of corporate affairs, and comms is not the only solve. If people are having their lived experience of you is bad, or if you've got issues that you're facing, I guess our learning, and I'm sure many of you feel this way too, but be fearless, because guide the business that action should come before words. I love the phrase, you can't talk your way out of something that you walked your way into. You've got to do the acting before you do the talking. And then when we do the communicating, again, just looping back, keep it real. Like, trust is a long game, very hard to earn and very quick to lose. So keep it authentic, use simple language, everyday language, talk to hearts and minds, not just heads, and own the bad as well as the good. And what better way to finish than at the end of the day, simple tip, one question we can all ask ourselves and the business, does it pass the pub test? So that's me, thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks for your presentation, Nicki. I guess I'm curious, going back to slide number 4, just looking at in a sense, the channel approach and what was the most effective. To make a really awful generalisation, a lot of executives are in an age bracket where they're used to traditional media being the number 1, 2 and 3 and everything else falls behind. So I'm just wondering how you sort of shifted that paradigm of the way they see reaching consumers and potential consumers when traditional media was sort of down the bottom in terms of its efficacy and wasn't particularly high along the axes of reach as well.
Yeah, I guess that's a great question actually, and going back to the value of having that research and insights program and concrete quantifiable evidence that we can take, our C-suite, the people that ultimately make decisions. Our board and our executive committee all read The Australian and the AFR, and so of course, coverage that we get in there reaches them straight away. So our challenge was, probably many of you relate to this as well, but is to explain the value of social to non-social people. Actually at Coca-Cola Amatil it was super easy because the CEO's son was a YouTube influencer. So she got the value of social, he made sure of that. But here at NBN, our CEO is ex-News Corp, so he more than any gets the value of traditional media. I guess the tips from us, one would be, use that kind of research and insights, because when we present that data to our C-suite, we break down there, we just had the 4 buckets of channels, but you can pull it right down as well and show the value of your social, your website, even your annual report. Wow, someone read it. And we were able to show that our social media posts on their own drove and it was double-digit reputation increase, and that we used that exact slide with a bit more detail as the case for having a higher spend on social. And then the other thing, for us, our head of social, yes, she's a really technical person, but really importantly, get people that can speak to non-social people, because you can't use the lingo, a bit like marketeers, if you're just going to use all the marketing language, it is really hard for C-suite to understand. But secondly, the great thing about social is the level of insights and return on investment stats you can get and how you can track people that you've reached on social, that you direct through to your website or that buy your products. So I think the research and insights, give them the data, show them the hard facts. And if you haven't got a CEO whose son is a YouTube influencer, that's probably your best bet.
Thank you for your presentation. I was just going to ask, how do you counter sort of negative reputational damage? I think that, and this may not be the case, but I think Australia's internet has a bit of a reputation of being
You can say it. It's
kind
okay,
of crap and kind
it.
of like lagging comparatively, like it's kind of has a reputation of being slow in general. So how do you counter that?
Yeah. And I guess you make a good point too, that is, we've said at the beginning, our job largely as comms professionals is to promote and protect. And there's no good us doing all the promoting if we're not doing the protecting. And I think it's why at the end talking to kind of keeping it real and owning the bad as well as the good. What we find with our people is that, and like I find it, I've worked at NBN for 2 years. When I was at Coca-Cola Amateur and I went there, everyone said, "What are you doing? Like Coke is killing our kids and poisoning our oceans. Why are you going there?" But there's heaps of really good stuff we could do, and I guess it's a bit like NBN as well. Certainly a couple of years ago, and even before that, we found that, and actually I didn't share, but one of the channels that isn't giving us reputational uplift is employee advocacy right now, because our people go to a barbecue or a conversation, and the first thing that people used to say to them is, "Oh, hi, who are you?" "Oh, so-and-so." "Oh, where do you work?" "Oh, NBN." "My bloody internet, like how can I get it fixed?" And so we realise you can't empower your people to advocate for your company by telling them about all the amazing stuff we do for Indigenous and, First Peoples or remote Australian communities or vulnerable people, or the fact that we've just, signed a PPA and putting a massive solar farm up and going 100% renewable energy, electrifying our fleet and all that. You can't do any of that if you can't get past you've got to fix your backyard, and that's the lived experience piece. So, we're definitely not there, and, still oftentimes you say you work for NBN and the first thing people will say is, "Oh, if you haven't got the direct experience, it's your mum or your dad or your hairdresser or whatever." So yeah, we've definitely got to do more in that area, but I think the challenge is when you supply a product or service to 20 million people, even point something of a percent, and I'm not saying it is just point something of a percent, but that's still thousands of pissed off people. So keep it real. What we're trying to do is help our people with how to respond to that, and as employees, we can access the tech team to get things fixed quickly, but not everyone can. And I guess the challenge is a small percentage of everyone is still a big number. And I'm not going to go into my NBN voice, but your service isn't just our fault. We're a wholesaler, so a lot of the time, and it's actually the challenge with being a wholesaler is we don't own the consumer relationship. We can't talk to you direct other than through our social channels and the text, but we've got to direct you to your retailer, whether that's Telstra or Optus. And there's so many things that can go wrong between, what we send the network to and then all the bits between the network and your experience, including whether you've got your modem behind your fridge or your TV, and all that kind of thing. And of course, power, weather, etc. So yeah, keep it real and own the bad and the good. And remember, it's a long game, I guess.